how about right now the theme of this election cycle is the government versus the people? Because that's exactly what's unfolding on your ballot with this year's propositions. And I would also submit to you that it's a great opportunity for a civics lesson for the family to actually go through those, because it covers everything from farming to hospitals, from taxes, like gas taxes, to eggs. There is so much going on in the propositions this year that I honestly think it could make a course for high schoolers to better understand civics and what's going on within our government. Now, there are 4 bonds that are on the ballot, and the voters are going to cast They're going to cast their ballots. There have been 40 bond issues totaling $160 billion in value since 1993 to 2018. Voters have approved 80% of all the bond measures, totaling $147 billion worth of debt for California voters over that time. Now, as a backdrop for considering how you might vote for these bonds, consider the fact that there's $1.3 trillion of state and local government debt, including unfunded liabilities in our state's state, local, and county pension plans. So we have a total of $1.3 trillion in local government debt, $83 billion of general fund supported bonds, which cost us, the taxpayer. They take out $6 billion a year from the general fund. $39 billion of general fund bonds have yet to be sold. So that takes us up to somewhere about $120 billion of bonds that currently are on our backs. Wait till you see this. This is a little disturbing. So I only want to direct your attention to 2 numbers on this. The bottom 2 numbers. The population in California is 39 million people. And that debt represents $32,000 of debt hanging around the necks of every man, woman, and child in this state. If you just look at the taxpayers, 17 million taxpayers, that's $73,000 around the neck of every single taxpayer in this country. So one of the other things, besides the state versus the people, one of the other themes that's unfolding there is a little Lucy and Charlie Brown. You remember how Lucy would yank the football? Charlie Brown, she'd build up Charlie Brown's trust and then yank the football, and he kept falling for the same trick over and over again. Well, that's the propositions, the same trick over and over again. So let's get right to the bonds, because there's so much more fun in this year's proposition. Okay, Proposition 1, $4 billion of housing programs and veteran home loans. Who doesn't want to give money and take care of our vets, right? I do. It was put on the ballot by the state legislature. It's going to cost over 35 years, $4.9 billion. Now, what it provides is $1 billion in home loans for vets, $3 billion in affordable housing for farm workers and low-income households. Wait a minute, I thought this was for vets. Little Lucy and Charlie going on there. Environmental and prevailing wage policies make this housing expensive. Now, one of the things you got to consider when you're voting on bonds is not just what's being taken out in a bond, but it's the total cost, $5.9 billion. And is there a better way to do it? What's not included in this $5.9 billion is the $1 billion in home loans for veterans that's going to be paid back by the veterans. So this is the cost of $3 billion of affordable housing for farm workers and low-income households. That cost is $5.9 billion. Now, this all sounds really good, except there's this thing called environmental and prevailing wage policies that are making this particular housing extremely expensive. Prevailing wage. Everybody know what prevailing wage means? Okay. Anybody doesn't know? A couple people. It just means that when they build this housing, they've got to pay the same rates as they pay state union workers. So that makes this stuff really expensive. And the people that are opposing this say there are much more affordable ways to build housing than doing it through the bond system. This was put on the ballot, keep in mind, by the state legislature. So this is something that they would like us to vote on. Chances are a lot of these, the statistics are that voters are just going to read the titles of these and not bother to read further. Now, here's something that's scary. Ballotpedia is a great resource for all of this. If If you're not familiar with Ballotpedia, it's a great place to go not only for initiatives and bonds like this, but also for elected officials. You get a little background on them. What Ballotpedia says is that you need a 4-year college degree to be able to read this bond measure in the ballot. Good luck with that, California, right? All right, that's Proposition 1. Proposition 2, $2 billion in bonds for homeless prevention, housing for mentally ill. We got to have a homeless problem in this state right now, right? Many of these people are suffering from mental illness. This authorizes the state to use revenue from what's called the millionaire's tax. It's costly. It's going to cost up to $5.6 billion to pay back $2 billion over 40 years. It creates a new $100 million state bureaucracies. How many people are up for new state bureaucracies? Right? That state bureaucracy, by the way, gets to write all its own rules. Now, what's interesting about this is that all of this housing has already been authorized under something called AB 727, but the money's already there. It's already been allocated. Why are we going to shovel it off onto bonds that are going to cost us $5.6 billion? See, this reduces this funding that's already in the state budget for taking care of the mentally ill people in terms of services. So the folks that get services in our counties will actually see those services reduced if this bond gets passed. Pretty scary. Prop 3, $8.9 billion in bonds for water and infrastructure and watershed conservation. This is going to cost us $17 billion over 40 years. It was put on the ballot by initiative, so they went out and gathered signatures from everybody. $4 billion is going to go to disadvantaged communities, not specified who or where they are. Another section of administrative code that has yet to be written by the bureaucracy that the bond itself creates. Fixes failing infrastructure, watershed health, flood management, groundwater, facilities upgrades. Big money for a few projects. There's 3 damaged canals, and also, did you read they finished the reconstruction of the Oroville project? It was supposed to cost $200 million. Anybody see what it ended up? $1 billion to fix that watershed project. Now, I was actually a no until I started reading this, and I'm neutral on it actually because it does do a lot of incredibly necessary infrastructure rebuilding in central California. These damaged canals are actually sinking because they've been, the farmers, have been pulling money out of the aquifers and the ground's been sinking. So all these canals are starting to fall apart and they need to be rebuilt. So I'm a little ambivalent. The price tag, $17 billion, that's a lot of money. Prop 4, $1.5 billion in children's hospital bond initiative. This was put on the ballot by initiative process. It's going to cost $2.9 billion over 35 years. 72% goes to private nonprofit hospitals, 18% to UC acute care facilities. And if the CCHA could have persuaded the legislator to put this on the ballot, could have persuaded the legislature to do this themselves, they wouldn't have had to put it on the ballot. So what that's saying is that for some reason or other, the legislature wasn't willing to allocate that money out of the general fund, so they had to put it on the ballot. There is no taxpayer or legislative oversight. Now, the hospitals that are getting this money do an incredible amount of good for our communities. 8 nonprofit hospitals, 5 in the UC system. A lot of people that can't afford the kind of care that these hospitals give get it from these hospitals. And the other thing is that there's a lot of technology upgrades that are necessary for these hospitals. I was against this, I read it, and now I'm neutral on it. But it is at a cost of a lot of money. The people that would advise us to vote against this say there are other avenues for these hospitals to be able to get this money. But right now it's on the ballot. Read it, you guys decide. I haven't made up my mind yet. Prop 5. There's 2 real estate ones on the ballot. This is the first one. If you're 55 years or older and you sell your home, you can transfer your tax basis one time. What Prop 5 is going to do is it's going to allow home buyers 55 and over to transfer their lower, possibly tweaked property tax basis an unlimited amount of times. So as many times as you want to sell or buy, you can do it. You can also buy a home of greater value and transfer your property tax basis. And the other thing that's kind of nice about this is it allows you to transfer anywhere in the state. Currently, you can only transfer your tax basis to 11 different counties and specific counties. Right now, under Prop 5, if it gets approved, you can move anywhere in the state of California. So if you own a big sprawling house inland and you want to buy a nice little condo at the beach that's more expensive than your sprawling house, you can do it and transfer your basis. That's kind of cool. Could potentially reduce property tax revenues up to $1 billion. I think our state will figure out how to deal with that. Prop 6. Who doesn't know what Prop 6 is about? Right? I hope everybody knows, and I hope this is a yes for sure. This repeals the fuel and car tax increases that went into effect November 2017. It also repeals, now we all talk about the increase of 12 cents on gas, 20 cents on diesel, and the increase in our car tax, our registration fees. What doesn't get talked a lot about is the fact that there are future scheduled fuel tax increases that will take the cost of tax on a gallon of gas up to $2 a gallon by 2021. They didn't tell us about that. That's a little Lucy and football thing. And then this adds, and I think this is the most important aspect of Prop 6, it adds a constitutional amendment that would require any future gas tax increases to be voted on by us, not the legislature. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And so here's what you can do. Between now and November 6th, call everybody on your cell phone and ask them if they voted. And if they haven't voted, ask them to vote yes on 6. This is so important. This could be, if we get enough people to the polls. And this election cycle is truly all about turnout. It is all about turnout. Little number that I researched, Riverside, 355,000 people voted in the 2014 midterm elections in Riverside County, total. 330,000 people voted for Donald Trump in 2016. If just the Donald Trump voters turn out, Riverside County belongs to the people that want to repeal Prop 6. So that's a big deal. All right, now I think I got time for one more. Now this is an interesting one because do any of you have friends, relatives, family that is getting dialysis right now? I'm just curious, of the people who are here who have people that are getting dialysis, raise your hand if you're in favor of Prop 8. I don't see a single hand. That's very telling. So the people who have family and friends who are getting this treatment are going to vote no, I'm taking it on Prop 8. Okay, it requires refunds for revenue above 115%. Okay, what that means is if there's two major companies that deliver dialysis in this, and that's why I say this is a great civics lesson, is studying these, because it gives you a little insight into how California unions look at profits. Profits are a bad thing. So what it's requiring is that revenue above 115% of the cost of direct patient care be refunded to the patients or the insurance companies. So if it costs them $1 to deliver the service, they make $1.30, they've got to give 15 cents back. Or before they file their taxes, spend that 15 cents on infrastructure, new machines, better technology. So what this is being advanced by is essentially this new front in the effort by SEIU to unionize the two largest dialysis organizations, DaVita, and I think it's pronounced Fresenius. But this is all about unionization. They're trying to force companies that do this into unionization. It's opposed by medical associations and caregivers. And this is a record-breaking proposition in terms of the amount of money that's being spent on this. $130 million total has been spent by the organizations in favor and opposed to this ballot measure. That's a record. Last one was $128 billion, and I forget which proposition it was for. That's a huge amount of money. But you just saw the folks that have family that's being treated by this. When I asked them if they were in favor of this, they didn't raise their hands. I think that tells you a lot about Proposition 8. Lastly, rent control. Who in here owns real estate? Can I see your hands that you rent out? Who rents real estate out? Okay. This is going to repeal a law that was passed in 1995 that prevents rent control. And it's going to establish 538 bureaucracies around the state of California in order to manage rental properties, single-family homes, townhomes, condos. Even if you rent a room out, you will come under this new umbrella of regulation. And here's the big deal. Right now, for those cities that have rent control, if you move out, they can raise the rents up to market. If this passes, you won't be able to do that. You'll have what's called vacancy control. So these organizations are actually going to control what you can rent your home out, because it's going to repeal this 1995 bill that protects you right now if you're renting your home out from any kind of rent control, unless it's already in place, was already in place before 1995. What I'd like to do real quick is advance to this one. How many of you eat eggs? Right? We all do. I love eggs. Get ready for your eggs to go up to about $5 a dozen if this passes. Now, the people that produce in California eggs, pigs, and veal will come under new laws. The SPCA is behind this because they want all the chickens and the pigs and the veal to be free range, right? Now, all the producers want to go free range by 2025. This would force them to do it by 2021, and it would cost an enormous amount of money. Now, the hidden little secret is this last point down here. Should California tell businesses outside California what to do? No. This proposition, if it passes, would allow California to regulate growers of eggs, veal, and pigs outside California if they want to sell them into California. So this is going to probably be tested for the Commerce Clause if it passes. So study these, have fun with them. This last one. Interesting, I get to talk about it on the very day that we've got to fall back an hour. Now, before I looked into this, I didn't really know which one was standard. Is the summertime the daylight saving time, or is the winter? Which one's the real time? It's winter. Yeah, when we spring forward into the spring, that's the fake time, right? And believe it or not, there's a lot of trivia around this. Ben Franklin actually figured out that this would save money. He was over in Paris, and he calculated how much wax would be saved if they shifted the times during the summer. I kid you not. There's a lot of great trivia about this. But what this would do, I mean, this is weird. This is how the legislators think. If this passes by a 2/3 vote, it will get rid of daylight savings time if and only if the federal government allows it to. I don't know what they were thinking, but here's something interesting that a lot of people might not be aware of. If we stay on daylight savings time, that whole regime, and it's saving time, by December 1st, cities of Santa Barbara won't see sunrise until 8. By January, the Bay Area not till 8:20, and Eureka not till 8:40. Now, opponents to this are saying kids going to school will be going to school in the dark, and that's a safety hazard. I didn't really think about that, but I'm a definite no on Prop 7. I kind of think daylight savings has a lot of benefits. Faith in Public Policy has a handout of recommendations. I've added a few in here. I've added my own up there, radio activist. That's what I call myself, a radio activist. Also, the Republican-Democrat Party, and then the election forum. Craig Huey, if you know Craig Huey, he comes out with recommendations in every county for how to vote. on everything from judges, which we never really hear about, to local elected candidates. And then he has his own recommendations on all the props. So for those of you that haven't voted, good luck. Ponder this. Read your ballot, and don't forget Ballotpedia, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you, guys.